All right, hello there everybody. Thank you for watching. Today we're back with another Federal Punch ammo test. So you might have seen the video that I uploaded a few weeks ago on the 40 Smith & Wesson Federal Punch. The video did pretty well. You guys seem to enjoy it. And of course the caliber that I want to see the most, the 9mm, you can't find anywhere. You just can't find 9mm ammo right now. So we're kind of stuck with these other calibers for now. But I had a very generous viewer after that first video reach out and offer to send me the 45 ACP Federal Punch. And I'm happy to say that today, that is what we're gonna test. So the 45 is an interesting caliber. I've done some 45 ACP tests here on the channel before, and the low velocity of the 45 makes it an interesting round in ballistics gel. I've had a lot of really, good brands and expensive, like premium self-defense ammo fail to expand in ballistics gel, especially out of shorter barrel pistols. And I assume that that is because of that low velocity that you get with the 45 ACP. And again, especially out of the small, like carry size pistols. But of course, like all other calibers, the most consistent round that I've tested and the one that typically does the best is the Federal Premium HST. So I'm curious to see how the Federal Punch does in 45, because in 40, it performed almost identical to the Federal Premium HST, and that has always been kind of the standard that I set here on the channel for self-defense ammo. And we do have a couple HSTs to compare this one to as well. All right, so I got my 10% ballistics gel block on the table down there, and we have a super crusty one behind it, just in case anything passes all the way through. Like I said, this is a self-defense round, so the gun we're gonna use for this video is the Smith & Wesson M&P Shield 45 that was given to me by Turtle Lake Tactical. As always, I want to shout them out because without them, I wouldn't have this gun. We're going to start with bare ballistics gel and just see how it does. You can see we got the Federal Punch in the magazine here, and actually I have the HST right here as well, just to show you guys what they look like side by side. They look almost identical. I mean, the HST is a little bit older, so it's not as shiny as the Federal Punch, but there's not a big difference in the way those bullets look. Let's start with the Federal Punch and bare ballistics gel and see how it does. This little 45 actually kicks quite a bit, so. All right. All right, so our Federal Punch went in right there towards the bottom right-hand corner. I actually like to start over here and then work our way this way towards the slow-mo camera as we go, so we can see all of those bullets. But you can see where it went in right there. And then from the top, you can see the wound cavity, hopefully. Looks standard, not abnormally small, not abnormally large. Just looks like a standard 45. The bullet actually exited the first gel block and then stopped right there, about 2 inches into our second ballistics gel block, and it definitely looks like it expanded. So we'll go ahead and give that one 18 inches, which is right there on the end of the FBI's requirement of 12 to 18 inches in ballistics gel, and it looks like it did pretty well. So he sent me a couple other rounds that we will test in future videos, but one of them that he sent was the 230 grain plus P HST. But since the Federal Punch that we just shot is standard pressure, not plus P, I think I'm gonna compare it to the 230 grain standard pressure HST. I actually have a couple of these left. So everything about these bullets is exactly the same. Same weight, same pressure, everything the same. So let's see how the HST does. I'm trying to put this one a little bit higher. Perfect. All right, so the HST went in just above the Federal Punch, and you can get a look at it from the top here. Probably see it better from the side, honestly. I think the wound cavity from the HST is definitely bigger, at least for the first 6 to 8 inches or so. And you can see that it traveled down our ballistics gel block and came to a stop right there. So several inches shorter than the Federal Punch. Looks like it might have expanded to a bigger diameter as well. I got the tape measure out for this one, and it looks like our HST stopped at about 13.5 inches, whereas the Federal Punch, I would say, stopped at about 18 inches. So that is all personal preference, depending on if you want more penetration or less penetration. I gotta say, for a 45 out of a short barrel, that's pretty impressive from the HST to get that much expansion and stop you know, that short in the ballistics gel, but a lot of people do prefer more penetration than that. So if that's what you like, the Federal Punch is probably a better choice. All right, now we're gonna do the heavy clothing test, which is a thin t-shirt layer, a thick t-shirt layer, a heavy fleece layer, and a heavy denim layer. This is a pretty tough test to pass, and especially for a 45 out of a small little pistol like this, I'm curious to see how it does. Starting with the Federal Punch. Don't you fall on me. All right, there's the entrance hole from our Federal Punch right there. And then over here, you can see the wound cavity is much better on this side of the ballistics gel. But you can see, I would say that might even be a bigger wound cavity than we had in bare ballistics gel, which is kind of weird. But that bullet continued down about halfway down that gel block. You can see the wound cavity gets quite a bit smaller, and then our bullet continued down the gel block and came to a stop right there just before it went into the second ballistics gel block. And you can see it did expand, not as much as it did in bare gel, which again is common, but that bullet definitely expanded and actually stopped shorter in the heavy clothing test than it did in bare ballistics gel, which is not what normally happens. Usually in the heavy clothing test, the bullets will expand less and penetrate further. But as you can see with the bare ballistics gel, we got a couple inches more penetration. I would say this one stopped at 16 inches since it, you know, is knocking on the door of that second gel block. And in bare gel, it stopped at 18 inches. So kind of an interesting result considering that it also expanded more in bare ballistics gel, but got more penetration. Interesting. All right, next we're gonna try the HST in the heavy clothing test. I gotta say that Federal Punch, that's pretty impressive. That's an impressive result, especially if you look at the difference between the two. Only a couple inches difference, and it actually penetrated less in the heavy clothing test. I'm definitely impressed by that. So let's see if the HST does any better. All right, so this is why the HST is and always has been the king of ballistic gel testing. It just always does so well. So you can see where the HST went in through the heavy clothing right there on the top left corner. Obviously I took the clothing off because it like flew away whenever I shot it. But you can tell that that bullet definitely passed through the heavy clothing as well. And if I must say so myself, that's some fine shot placement right there, boys. I'm a marksman at 5 yards. But over here you can see the wound cavity from the HST on top. And once again, it's definitely bigger than the Federal Punch. Again, some people don't care about that at all, but that wound cavity is definitely bigger. And then the bullet continued down our gel block and came to a stop right there. And look at that expansion. That is impressive. But if you look at the top of the gel, you can really see how impressive that is. That is an identical result from the bare gel to the heavy clothing test, and they look like they might have even expanded the same. Of course, we'll take them out and look at them, but from here, they look like they literally performed identically, which is almost unheard of. That very rarely happens, and again, the HST is just always super impressive. But I gotta say, the Federal Punch impressed me as well. And I believe the Federal Punch is cheaper than the HST, so keep that in mind. The HST is like, you know, their top of the line self-defense ammo. But if we didn't compare it to the HST, the Federal Punch would have done really well. And it's, you know, impressive in its own right. The HST is just kind of on another level. But let's take them out of the gel block and see what they look like. Dude, there's these little black bugs that are biting the crap out of me. It's been freezing cold for like a week. Then today it got super warm and rainy and the bugs are back, which I'm not a fan of. All right, so I got these bullets out of the ballistics gel. First we will look at the Federal Punch. So this is the Federal Punch that we shot into bare gel. You can see the expansion on the front of that bullet there, and then you can see how much it flattened out, and then compare that to the Federal Punch that we shot into the heavy clothing. Obviously, definitely a difference. The bare gel expanded quite a bit more, but I gotta say the heavy clothing actually did pretty good. Not a big difference in terms of how much they flattened out, but you can see the bullet diameter, there's definitely a little bit more expansion in the bare gel. Now for the HST, this one here is the one that we shot into bear gel. And I mean, just an enormous bullet. I'll go ahead and show you guys that compared to the Federal Punch that we shot into bear gel. It looks like a different caliber, honestly. That HST is just enormous. So yeah, HST obviously did really good in bear gel, and then in the heavy clothing test, you can see there is a little difference in the gel. I didn't think there was, but the bear gel HST did expand just a little bit more than the one that went through the heavy clothing test. But again, they both did really well, and then not a big difference in how much they flattened out. So I'll go ahead and give you guys a top-down look at these bullets as well, so you can see them all kind of side by side there. Again, Federal Punch bear gel heavy clothing test, HST bear gel heavy clothing test. So you can kind of get an idea of how the four of those look and how they performed. All right, everybody, that is gonna do it for me today. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this ballistics gel test. The Federal Punch is kind of a hot commodity right now. Everyone seems to be interested in it. I've gotten a bunch of comments about it, you know, over the last few months, and finally we're able to start getting our hands on some of these and test them. Once again, I want to thank the viewer who sent these out. I really appreciate it. I will test some of the others that you sent down the road as well, and I look forward to it. But as far as the results, HST obviously dominated. It usually does. It's just a really good round in every caliber that I've ever tested. But the Federal Punch, you know, if you don't compare it to the HST, which is a more expensive round, it did really well. A lot of 45s don't expand at all in that heavy clothing test, especially out of the small M&P shield. So when you consider that, neither one of them over-penetrated or under-penetrated. They both stopped between 12 and 18 inches in the ballistics gel, and they both expanded in the ballistics gel. And like I said, with the 45, just getting expansion sometimes is an accomplishment, because there are some really big brand name 45s that I've tested that don't expand in the gel. But as far as, you know, what you prefer, that's all up to you. If you like more penetration, then I would say go with the Federal Punch, at least in ballistics gel. It does seem to give more penetration. If you like less penetration and more consistent expansion, and a 45 that expands to the size of a golf ball, then get the HST, because that seems to be what it does. But personally, I wouldn't mind using either one of them. But on that note, I think I'm gonna end this video right here, guys. If you like the video, please let me know down in the comments, and as always, hit that like button for me. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.